Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged.
Welcome to Lattes and Leaders. We have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Lori Rapp, who is superintendent in Texas, and we are so excited and happy to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I was really excited to get to have this conversation. I've enjoyed watching the other guests on Lattes with Leaders and just looking forward to the opportunity to visit about something near and dear to my heart, which is leadership.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, me too. So let's just dive right in. Just share a little bit about your educational journey to where you are now and kind of, what motivated you or just guided you towards that leadership role to becoming a superintendent.
Yeah. Truly, Brad, my journey started with my third grade teacher. I've told this story all across our community and our school district. I had my parents divorced when I was in the third grade specifically. And so third grade for me was just a really rough year. And my sweet third grade teacher, whose name was Miss Robertson, I've shared with everybody, she really made the classroom a safe space for me that year that was so tough. And she got to know about our situation as a family. And because of how she took a special interest in me, it caused me, as I started to grow up, to also want to be able to make that same kind of difference in the lives of other people. And so I really decided from a pretty young age, I wanted to be a teacher. And I ultimately became a high school math teacher and loved teaching high school. I love everything about the high school experience. I love all the activities and just getting to interact with older kids. But I had a supervisor at that time who worked here in Lewisville ISD. Her name's Barry Madison, and she was over math curriculum at the time. And she saw something in me I truly didn't see in myself. And after I got my master's degree, she asked if I would be interested possibly in interviewing to work with her at central office, supporting other teachers in implementing math curriculum. And I said yes, which ultimately became a life-changing experience for me because I thought I was going to teach math for the rest of my life in classroom H205 at the Colony High School. And it started a leadership journey that really grew my love even more deeply for public education. And when I looked around at an opportunity we had when I was in central office, and you see a group of excellent public education superintendents who all are closer to the end of their career, and I asked myself, what's going to happen when this generation of leaders retires? Who's going to step up for public schools? And that's where I really thought to myself, I want to be one of those people. I wasn't for sure what that meant for me at the time, but I started working on my doctorate degree and at Dallas Baptist University, and I got my superintendent certificate as a part of that. And my predecessor, Dr. Kevin Rogers, he also saw something in me I don't think I saw in myself either. And I was able to be an assistant superintendent for him and ultimately a deputy superintendent, and then applied to be superintendent when he retired. And here I am today.
Yeah, it's always, I love to hear when people had someone in their lives that saw something in them that maybe they didn't realize they had or seen themselves. And I
Mm.
think that's pretty common. One of the things I always share is we have a hard time thinking of ourselves as having talents and strengths, but we can always see them quickly in other people, especially colleagues or that we work with. And it's
Mhm.
interesting that we often don't really realize what we have. And so it really is good to have people that see that and that encourage you to utilize that and to develop that. So to get to that role. That's a great
Absolutely.
story. Yeah, that's a great story. Usually I ask next who influenced you, but that's those are great stories. And, I think we all have a teacher or two, and some have more, but I think most of us have at least that one or two that really impacted us, even at a young age. Maybe not
Mhm.
that we thought we would go into education or not, but that just really impacted us and made an impact on our lives. And I think that's such a wonderful thing about being in the education field, and especially teachers and even administrators, is that we do have that opportunity. I think that's a big part of what keeps us going and keeps us in that mode.
I definitely share. I just share with staff all the time. I think we're in the greatest profession there is because you have the ability to impact the lives not only of your students, but their families and entire communities. So I agree with you. I think there's just nothing more important in the life of a student than a teacher.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, apart from family, like I said, I just think that, yeah, I agree with you on that. That they can just really impact the trajectory of some students' lives, which is an amazing thing.
That's
When you
right.
think back on the journey and where you're at and at each stage, what do you feel like was your maybe one or two strengths that you brought with you that helped you to be effective in your leadership?
One of the first strengths I tell people I rely on the most throughout my whole career, and actually it's only continued to increase, is being a listener. I really think that to be a leader, you have to first be a listener of people.
Mhm.
And alongside of that, you listen out of genuine care and concern for others. I just genuinely love education. I love everything about it. I say it's one of the hardest jobs there is. It's one of the hardest industries there is, and I don't know that we've seen a harder time in education recently than what we're facing possibly right now. But I genuinely want to help teachers and students and our schools be the best that they can be, whether that was how I was acting as a teacher in the classroom or when I had the opportunity to be an instructional coach and help support other teachers in their classroom environment and instruction. But I learned very quickly you can't help support people if you don't listen to them. It's
Mhm.
not really about what you want. It's about really trying to understand what are they needing. And that's really how you identify how do you best help them. And I think once you listen and you build that relationship with someone through listening, then they're a lot more open to you, to if it's a fellow teacher, to them letting you help be a part of their classroom. If it's a family, they're much more open to hearing how you can help them in a situation they may be facing. But you can't really support people fully if you don't just step back and listen first and foremost. So that skill is one that I use all the time, and I really try to hone my listening skills constantly. I think it's a constant work in progress on being a listener. I think it's something you can get better at over time. I really do believe that. um, and then the other thing that I've just carried with me and learned early in my career, both with kids and then in supporting teachers, is how important it is to truly build relationships. I
Mhm.
had a great mentor in the person that I student taught with, she was a master relationship builder in the classroom. The kids knew that she cared first about them and their success more than she cared about the math content that she was teaching, because she knew if they believed in her belief in them, then they could learn the math together, right? So I got to watch some master relationship builders in my career here in Lewisville ISD, and I just believe in the power of relationships. It's evident on my superintendent social media. I spend the majority of my time either in our schools, out in our community with our
Mm,
families, our staff, and our students. And for me, everything starts first with relationships.
I love that. Because sometimes you do it's easy for you, especially as superintendent, to get caught up in everything you have to do, and the meetings and the paperwork, and to carve out that time to go and be with your staffs and your schools and your people. I just think that's so important. And they notice it too.
For
Because I
sure.
know the places that don't, that they definitely notice that as well. So that is so key. And I mean, you're definitely speaking my language with the whole relationship thing, because to me, yeah, I mean, how do you lead people if you don't know them? And like you said, know what they need. And the only way you're going to know that is to listen to them.
Mm.
And, that really is, I think, the foundation of good leadership. So I'm sure that your staff and your teachers appreciate that as well. That tends to be something that builds that trust with you. And, that's such a big important part of leading them, is that they trust you because of that.
One of the things I shared after I got named superintendent, I went around the district and did a very non-traditional version of the meet and greet. Even though people knew me, I know they didn't know me as superintendent of schools. They knew me in all these other capacities, and so we kind of settled on the hashtag our communications team did as I started this journey of Rap on the Road, and it's just kind of continued to grow. But I went to the schools, I went out in the community rather than having a come meet the superintendent in this location. And one of the things I said to every school and all the staff I talked to was, what works in the classroom is relationships with kids. And I can't ask you to build relationships with kids if I'm not doing that same thing as the superintendent. And so for me, building relationships with you as superintendent of schools started from day one. And that was
Mm,
was me going to where they are, because where they are is where the work is. The work isn't in my office. The work is in our community and in their classrooms.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great philosophy. What was the
Rap
hashtag?
on the road.
Rap on the road. I like that.
Yeah. Rap is always on the road pretty much.
So you talk about the importance of the communication and things. How do you, because I noticed just looking through some of the stuff, apps and the newsletters and things. So how do you focus on that, and share a little bit maybe about the app, if it's something that's kind of different or new or something that you had thought of, and just share a little bit about how, because we know we always talk about building community and being part of a team with the community, but
Mhm.
we have to really focus on doing it and make those connections with them too. So how do you do that?
Well, one of the things that I was able to really focus on in after I did a lot of listening tours in becoming superintendent was this idea of the 3 Cs, that we were going to focus in this district on communication, connection, and culture. And that we were going to come together as what we like to call one Lewisville ISD. And one of the ways that we tackled communication is through superintendent newsletters, establishing superintendent social media. And it was newsletters for both staff and our community to every month to keep them updated about what's going on in our school district and hearing from me specifically, whether it's celebrating something that's been great or using that communication channel to talk about a challenge that we're facing.
Mm,
You
mhm.
know, we're in education, and I also think it's our job to help educate our community about what's going on in public education and how can they help protect and take care of our schools in our community too. And so the app really was a conversation around how do we diversify the way that we're communicating with families. Yes, people check emails and we send the newsletter through our regular email channels, but sometimes people want to opt in to push notifications in this society that we're in right now, and people are used to having an app and getting something pushed out to them and having a say in, do they want to check it through an email or do they want it to be pushed. And so we're still really in the early stages of our adoption of our LISD app, but we've had great success and great feedback from people that have downloaded it. And so my newsletters, for instance, when we push those out, if a person has chosen push notifications, it pops up on their phone and it says a message from our school district. My newsletter is called the rapport for our community because that's my goal, is to establish rapport. I had no idea, and my husband didn't either, that the name Rapp would come in so handy.
I was just thinking that.
We use it all the time for all kinds of things. Our staff newsletter is called the Wrap Up, and you've got the Wrap on the Road and all the things. We have a whole education series about our budget and other things. We call that Unwrapped as we teach people. So it's all over the place. But basically, the app is just a quick way for us to be able to push out information to families. And again, it's based on their communication style and if they want that. But our schools are able to push out their newsletters that way as well. You're able to easily connect back with our school board and our school district news. You're even able to check the cafeteria balance of your child's cafeteria account through the app. You're able to easily submit the absence note for your child. If they miss school, you can do that through the app. So it's got a lot of promise and potential as we continue to move forward, as we really focus on using multiple communication styles and methods with our community.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you give options because, like you said, people have such diverse ways that they want to be contacted or how that they engage with, either the internet or email or social media in general. Everybody
Right.
has their preferences. And so the more you can offer them those options, I think the more interaction you'll get from them, which is what you want anyway. So I'm sure that
Absolutely.
you've seen that too, a higher level of, feedback and that interaction because of that.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the challenges of an organization. Communication is a challenge when you're, whether you have 100 people or like us with 47,000 kids and 127 square miles,
Mhm.
6,800 staff. Imagine the numbers of people that we're trying to communicate with, and everybody truly does have a little bit different way they want to receive communication. And so, in some regards, you can sometimes feel like you're over communicating, I suppose, because you have an email and you have the app and you have phone calls and then you have your social media. But really, you're just trying to find that you're using avenues that people will want to utilize, and you just are really trying to communicate in as many ways as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely attest to that because, with my social media, I know there's people that are only on Twitter. There's some people that are
Mhm.
only on Facebook. And so I have to, be diligent in making sure I'm hitting each one because there's some people that, only use one, Instagram or whatever. And so, like you said, meeting them where they are most comfortable is just so important. And it takes a little bit more planning, I guess, but I think it's definitely worth it.
I would agree with that. I mean, I have a high school student advisory, that I meet with regularly, and one of their ideas last year, the group was for me to do an Instagram takeover. When I'm out and about in the community, I find that kids really are maybe interacting more with our Instagram versus parents are interacting more with Facebook, and so it really does vary.
The other thing I saw that you do really well, and I think is so important because we spend, you think about the course of a school year, you think about students from about age 5 to 18, that they spend
Mhm.
a lot of their waking hours in a school building. But so do the adults, the teachers, the staff, the administrators. And so it needs to be a place that we enjoy coming. It should be a place that, because people are always kind of like, not all, but there's some people, like, oh, well, it doesn't shouldn't always be fun. It should be, it's hard work or whatever, but should be a place we all want to go and look forward to coming to. And I think a big part of that is celebrating, accomplishments each other. And so I know you have, I already forgot the name of it. I think it's recognize someone, I
Yes.
think.
Yes.
So yeah, share a little bit about that and what prompted that and just a little bit about that.
Well, we face right now in education a real big challenge with teacher retention and recruitment. And we just thought about how do we go about not only telling the great things that are going on in our public schools, but really celebrating the work that goes on every day. I get to see it firsthand as superintendent, being in all of our schools and being out in the community. And as I was out and about, so many different parents or people would come up and say, I just love this teacher, they did this for me, or I love this principal, they were there for my kid. And I was getting all of these different stories from people, and I came back to our team, and I was just saying, we've got to have a way to give people a chance to share this feedback directly in a way that we can celebrate these stories, because there's so many more stories of celebrations than there are the other things that
Right.
can take up the noise, right? And so we just really committed ourselves. I've got a great creative leadership team that I'm surrounded by, and I'm so appreciative for the work, especially our chief of staff, Dr. Shauna Miller, and our chief accountability and evaluation leader, Dr. Sarah Fitzhugh, for really putting some brain power behind working with our communications team on how do we gather these stories, turn them into something that the schools can then or departments have to celebrate what the good news, that the brags and compliments. And it really has taken on a life of its own. And so in the very first year we rolled it out about halfway through the school year. We had over 3,000 submissions,
Wow.
and people can click on a recognize someone link. They simply submit what they want to brag or compliment a staff member on. And I started reading some of those at our school board meetings. We in our monthly principal meetings, we read the recognize someone's on our principals, and then we give our principals their stack of cards to take back to campus. And as I walk around classrooms, I will see those recognized cards up near their desk or outside their door, and people just started doing some really fun things with them, and staff started also sharing compliments with one another, and that's been so encouraging to see. And so last school year, a whole full school year of recognize someone, we had over 7,000 submissions where people were celebrating our staff. And I tell you, the stories we've gotten from celebrating a nurse who has really saved the life of one of our students on campus, celebrating a bus driver, cafeteria worker, teacher, curriculum staff person being celebrated by a teacher. The list goes on and on and on. And so it really is true. You have got to be intentional about how to celebrate the work of your people. And I am so proud of how our whole organization truly at this point has pulled together and worked to celebrate one another, and our communities working to celebrate our school district. It's been awesome.
I love that so much, and I'm glad you shared that because it's even more than what I thought it was. So I'm glad you were able to share that because it's so important in celebrating and encouraging each other. Like you said, not it's not just the administrators doing it to the staff, which is important, but it's colleagues doing it and it's parents doing it. So it just makes it that much more impactful. And like you said, it's almost like a prized possession, so they put them somewhere and display them, because they're proud of it and because we all love to be recognized for a job well done. And I
Yeah.
do, I think that's so important. One of the things I talk about, like with geese, when geese are in flight and they're honking, one of the main reasons that they honk is they're encouraging the other geese around them. And
Mm.
so we should be like that as well. It's not just the leader honking, but it's everybody honking and encouraging each other and the people around us, seeing, paying attention to the good things they do, because we know, when we praise those things, when we pay attention to those things, those are the things that get replicated because they're viewed, they're seen, they're appreciated, they're praised, and so it just helps build a more positive culture. So I love that you do that. And I know it took work to get to that point, but it definitely, I know that you would say it's definitely worth it.
It really is. And I'm so, when you look at the recognize someone card, I just can't brag enough on the team of leaders that I have around me that take ideas like that and make it possible. And one
Mhm.
other quick idea I'd love to share too, it branched off of the recognize someone, but again back on celebration and building culture. The week we came back from spring break, we launched our very first ever thank a teacher effort. And so we give a survey to our students in grades 4 through 12. And on the fall survey, we asked our students if they had a teacher they would like to thank. And we were blown away at the number of thank yous that were written about teachers. I wish I had a way to get the same thing from our students in pre-K through 3 as well. And so we also, the same team, our great communications team, and Dr. Miller and Sarah Fitzhugh got together and put their brains back together about how to tell these great things the kids had shared. So when our teachers came back, our principals and our school chiefs did a great job of passing out those thank a teacher cards. They spread them out throughout the week. They came up with other ways to even get celebrations from our kids in the primary grades, and I can't tell you how impactful it was to watch that go on. It was only our first time at it, so I know it'll get better as we continue. But we start off the school year with such a big bang. We start off with really this effort and intensity and excitement. And you go into the last 9 weeks of the school year, and it's like we need to start the last 9 weeks with that much celebration too. And so we didn't intend it this way exactly, but the fact that coming back from spring break and it being like we're going to go into this last 9 weeks and we're going to unleash all these thank yous from our kids to our teachers, and in many ways that's fuel to finish
Oh
that
yeah.
school year strong, and remember your why and connect back to your purpose. And some of our elementary teachers that got cards from kids who were in high school, I'm excited to see what the future holds for this effort. Like I said, it was just our first attempt, but I couldn't be prouder of our principals and how they take ideas like this and really breathe life into them. And I'm just excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I really like that idea to think a teacher, because one of the things I always share with teachers is you're impacting lives. They may never tell you, and they may not even know how to tell you. And so this gives an opportunity for them to do it. And to me, that's just amazing. And I can't even imagine how it made you talked about recharging. I mean, or fuel for the end of the year. I can't even imagine, what that does to teachers to get that. And the thing is, it's not the same teachers because different teachers reach different students, which is the great thing about teaching. I always say there's no standardized student, there's no standardized teacher. And thank goodness there's not, because there are teachers
Mhm.
that reach some students that some don't, and there's other teachers that reach other students, and that's just a powerful thing. And to have them in their life, even if it's for a year, is just so incredible. But to take the time to do that, I just love that, to thank a teacher for that and for having that influence on them. They keep those, they cherish those cards and those notes. So that's
Absolutely.
what a way, like you said, to recharge. I really love that. All right. So when we think about the school year, all the struggle, the time, I know as a superintendent, you spend a lot of your time there. How do you how do you take time for yourself?
Mhm.
We always say self-care, but it's really more than that. But how do what do you do to really keep yourself at fully charged, I guess, so to speak?
Yeah, first one of the first things I do is I believe firmly you've got to know what feeds your soul. Because if you don't know what feeds you and where you get your energy from, then I think you're going to burn out really in any role that you have. And so from a professional perspective, I think first you've got to be sure you're doing those things that feed you and energize you. And for me, that's what you see when you see my social media is it's being with people. It's being out
Mhm,
in the community and being in our schools. And it's like what you were saying earlier, you could very easily in this role, yes, fill up many of your days with meetings and email and phone calls. But that if you don't do the things that ultimately feed your purpose, those other things are going to burn you out. And
mhm,
so you can really quickly, if you're not careful, find yourself inching into all of that more than the other, if that makes sense. And so I think
mhm,
first and foremost, when it comes to self-care, you've got to be sure that you're taking time to go be connecting to your purpose. And you've got to also, of course, find time. My family is precious to me. And before I interviewed to become superintendent, we talked as a family. This is a family job. Like
mhm,
you have to all be in on this kind of role because of the amount of time that it's going to take. And so you definitely, of course, have got to find time to be with your family. But I think you've got to share your family with the district, and you've got to share the district with your family, if that makes sense.
mhm,
Because when you're sharing those things, that also helps you uh, be able to self-care on both fronts. But to me, the last thing I would say about self-care is I think you've got to be sure to not make yourself feel like you've got to do everything perfectly. One of the
mhm,
most common questions I get from a lot of people out on the road, but especially from females, whether it be other female leaders or our teachers, is how do you do all of this? Like, how do you have a family and how are you everywhere? And people often ask me, is there a clone of you somewhere? Like, how is this happening? And ultimately, I came to a realization a long time ago on my leadership journey. I am not going to be perfect at all the things that I'm trying to do. And giving yourself grace
mhm,
is critical to self care Like, we can be our own worst critics and be beating ourselves up about all the things we feel like we didn't do versus celebrating the things we did do. And you have got to let go of that inner self critic. No matter what you try to do for self care, if you don't manage your inner self critic, the self care things you're doing are not going to work. Like, self
Mm.
care starts up here first and foremost, I believe. And so you've got to give yourself grace. It is okay. It is okay to not be perfect every day at everything. In fact, that's an impossible standard, and you need to let that go, because if you don't, you're going to feel like a failure every single day. And that's not going to allow you to pour into the lives of those you lead. And it's not going to allow you to pour into the life of your family. So,
Mm.
my biggest encouragement, and I hope this can help someone today, is control that inner self critic and give yourself a lot of grace and do the best you can with the hours that you have, and let that be enough.
I love that. That is so true. One of the things I talk about with educators is we tend to be what's called high agreeableness. And it's everything you just said. We're our own worst critic. We feel like we have to be perfect. We have a tough time setting boundaries and saying no. And so, like you said, it leads to burnout. And so
Yep,
you have to be able to do that. But I don't think I've ever had anyone share it that way, though, that you did, that, you got to let go of perfection and you got to stop being your own worst critic. Even as a leader, we talk about that with teachers, but sometimes we forget that with the leaders too. And so I
yep,
do love that because it is, I always say that perfection is a fool's errand because it's
yes,
impossible. And so
yes.
we just have to be satisfied with giving our best and knowing that that's good enough. So I think that is wonderful advice. And I appreciate you sharing that because that is, like you said, the other stuff that you try to do for self-care doesn't matter if you can't get that part right.
That's
So
right.
you're so right.
Well, think about
Wonderful.
when we were teachers in the classroom, some lessons that you created went better than others, right? There were days where you thought you had created the best, most perfect lesson, and it didn't work. And we really sometimes can hold on to those things as teachers, or whether we're doing professional learning with a group of teachers and you plan an activity and you think this is going to be great and it falls flat too. and I don't know why those things stick in our brains so much. That's maybe someone else's talk to give, but you learn from those experiences, right? And you go back into that classroom, you go back into that next professional learning time, and you have a better lesson because of it. You have a better professional learning the next time because of it. You have maybe a better interaction with a family that the first interaction didn't go well. We learn from those things, but I do think that we set the bar really high for ourselves, which we should, but then when we don't meet it, we
Mm.
just, beat ourselves up over it. And my heart for people is just like, please stop beating yourself up. You did the best you could. You put the best plan in place. If you gave it your best effort, just go the next day and try again, and don't give up, and let it be okay.
Well, and you said the perfect word a minute ago because we're so good at giving grace to others, but we have to learn how to give ourselves grace as well. So I love that you shared that, and that's the perfect word to fit right there as well. So we have to learn how to give ourselves grace and be patient with ourselves. So that's a good word.
Mm.
Is there any like nugget of wisdom beside all of that? I mean, we could probably end right there, and maybe we should. um, but is there any like a closing thought? Maybe I'll put it that way. Is there a closing thought or a word of encouragement you would like to give to, when I love talking to superintendents, and especially if you've been there a little while, because we know we talk about the attrition rate with teachers. Man, the turnover rate of superintendents is probably the worst. It's about every 2 to 3 years on average. And
Mhm.
so when you think of being in those, when the principal's not much better, it's about 3 to 4 years. So is there like just a word of encouragement or something you would like to share with administrators through these times where it does seem like that, man, we're losing so many people and people burn out so fast in leadership roles?
Yeah, I really do think, as you said, there's just a true educator retention, recruitment and retention issue at all levels of education. And there are the highest levels of burnout maybe that we've ever seen. And I think we face really complex circumstances. We have very hard jobs, and I think you've got to recognize that yes, the job is hard and it is complex no matter what role you have in education, from the classroom to the superintendency. The job is complex. And one of the things people thank me for is they're like, thank you for not glossing over that. Thank you for recognizing that it's hard.
Mm,
This work is hard, but you always come back around to say, but we can do this by uniting together. And so I think we do a disservice to our educators if we pretend like it's maybe not hard, or we have all the answers, or maybe have just a sense of possibly even sweeping some really serious things under a rug just because it is so hard. I think we need to not be afraid to say these jobs are hard, and we need to be here for one another. And
mm,
yes, it every hard time doesn't last for forever. I shared with our principals and leaders at Inspire, going on 29 years in our school district and in education. The longer you're in this, you see a lot, and sometimes are harder than others. But every day you're surrounded by more good going on than you
mm,
are not good. And I think and that's why it's so critical as a leader of an organization. To me, you find ways to celebrate, lift up,
mm.
and hold
Yeah,
up the good. And I'm just so proud to serve our community. And I always tell them we will get through this, but we'll have to get through it together. And for that, we call that one LISD. So
I love it. And you're so right. Yeah. I mean, it's just if to get through it together. I mean, it's the team and the focus on the positive, the celebrating and that type of thing. So I think that's a great place to end it as well. I guess we could call that a wrap, except I have one more question.
sure, yes.
uh, so this is lattes and leaders. So what is your favorite hot beverage of choice?
Yeah, it's coffee. All the way
It's
coffee. Now, I can't drink it without some cream and some sweetener in it, but I absolutely believe in drinking coffee every single day.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I thoroughly enjoyed just your conversation, but the focus that you have and the positivity that you're bringing to your role and to the community, and just those great little things you're doing. I know people are going to listen to those and want to hopefully implement a lot of that. So we'll put on the website when we launch this some links if you want to share where maybe they can find some of the information or even just look at some of the things that you're doing, because I know that it'll pique a lot of interest. So because that is a great thing you're doing. So but yeah, thank you so much for just taking the time to stop by and share that with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for connecting leaders. I appreciate it so much.
This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guest, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.